Okay, comrades, I'm going to apologise for the fact that I'm going to sit down. By my internal clock, it's 20 to 3 in the morning. And I feel okay up here, but my legs are jet lagged. So, will you excuse that? The title is, what do we really mean by a workers' revolution? And I suppose we could start by saying, what do you mean by talking about the idea of a workers' revolution in a period like this? After all, it is not immediately on the agenda. You know, if anybody thought it was, sorry. But what do we mean by discussing it? Actually, we have to discuss it now, because we have to be prepared. We have to be quite clear that we have to be prepared now. There was in Poland a group of 40 socialists who formed a committee called the Committee for the Defence of Workers. And they campaigned from 1976 to 1980 that the Polish workers should rise up and fight for free trade unions and for improvement in their conditions and so on. There was a tragedy about them that they didn't discuss before socialist politics. And in fact, they were reformists. And 40 reformist socialists, magnificent comrades, but reformists, fought for the birth of solidarity. And thanks to them, solidarity rose up. We have to thank them for that. But thanks to them also, we have to say, because of their politics, it was a terrible tragedy. Because solidarity never went beyond the politics, of course. Now, we have 80, so we have to practice, we have to rehearse, we have to be prepared. The second reason why the question matters is because we live in an epoch of wars and revolutions. That was Lenin's description of the period before and during and after the First World War. We live in such a period now. 5 times in the last 15 years, workers in different parts of the world have had the opportunity, had they had the political organisation and the political will, they've had the opportunity to begin the process of the World Revolution. In France in 1968, in Chile in the early 70s, in Portugal in the mid-70s, in Iran in the late 70s, and Poland in the early 80s. 5 times the possibilities have arisen in the last 15 years. And the crisis is deepening all the time. We have to say we live in the period of crisis, of war, revolution. Even if at this moment we look around the world and we don't see the revolution anywhere. We have to be prepared. Now, what I want to do in the talk is to talk about the question of what we mean by a social revolution, a workers' revolution, and try and talk about it in a completely non-science fictional sort of way, in a completely non-utopian kind of way. And trying to draw, not very satisfactorily because there isn't time and so on, but trying to draw on the actual experience of workers in different kinds of movements in the past and in the fairly recent past, in the quite distant past and the more recent past. I want to start off by saying, I want to say there are 3 parts to the talk, if you like. I want to talk about 3 phases to a revolution. The first phase is the initial upsurge, the spontaneous outburst that always begins every revolutionary process. Secondly, I want to talk about the process of political victory. And thirdly, if there's time, and I'm going to keep my eye on my watch because I know that everybody's very hot and very tired, if there's time, I'll try and say something about some of the problems of the initial process of consolidating a revolution, beginning the process actually of constructing socialism. So that's the structure of the talk, and I'll end with the 1 or 2 remarks that won't surprise everybody. Every revolutionary movement begins with a crisis. And the character of the crisis was very well described by Lenin in a pamphlet which he wrote called Left-Wing Communism. And he said every revolutionary crisis, every revolutionary possibility, every revolutionary situation has got 2 basic elements. The first element is that the ruling class can no longer continue to rule in the old way. Not that the ruling class can't continue to rule, but they can't continue to rule in the old way. And secondly, and this is the other half that makes the revolutionary situation, that the oppressed and exploited sections of society, the working class, the peasantry, all the oppressed and exploited in society, refuse to continue to be ruled in the old way. Not that they're yet ready for the revolution, but they refuse to be ruled in the old way. And those 2 things together make a revolutionary situation, the first phase. Now, the crucial thing that happens is a change in class consciousness, in the consciousness of the ruling class and in the consciousness of the working class. Those are the 2, there's a massive change in class consciousness, which is the prelude, the beginning of every revolutionary possibility. And about it in the wrong way. We think about it as it means a certain kind of description of the world. If you're class conscious, you know that that workers are exploited, that they produce surplus value and that they're exploited. If you're class conscious, you know that sexism and racism and nationalism are means by which the working class is divided and therefore made less able to struggle against capitalism. If you are class conscious, you know that the state is an engine of class oppression. If you are class conscious, you know that imperialism is a means by which the advanced metropolitan countries suck resources out of the more backward countries, and so on. That's what class consciousness is, knowing those things. Now, I am the last person, and anybody here is going to be the last person, to say those things aren't important. But the truth is, you can learn them from books. You can get a BA in studying. You can have a BA in Marxism. I don't even let you get one in some countries. A BA in learning those things, and you are not class conscious in the really important sense. Because there's an active side to class consciousness, and an active side to what really matters in the process of the development of a revolutionary situation. You see, Marx said there was nothing original at all in my saying that the class struggle is the motor of history. He said, I didn't say that first. Bourgeois historians said it about the French Revolution. Bourgeois theorists like Adam Smith said it in the 18th century. There was nothing original at all in saying there are classes in capitalism and that there is a struggle between classes. I am not the first to say it, said Marx. What was new about my theory was my insisting that the class struggle under capitalism can lead to the dictatorship of the proletariat, and thereby to the destruction of class society entirely. That was what was original, Marx claimed in his theory. Now that's an active idea, not something you can simply learn. You will not be able to get a degree in learning that the dictatorship of the proletariat is what we have to fight for and so on. That it's very difficult to find any university course to get a BA, MA or PhD. Even, I don't know what you have here, but ordinary level for 16-year-olds, you can't get it. You have to learn that in life, and you have to be proved in life. There's no way in which it can be tested empirically except in action. Now, in that, you have to live it. You can't learn it, you can't just learn it from books, you have to live class consciousness in that sense. Now, we have to be quite honest, we are not class conscious in the second sense. Because the reality of our lives today is not of being class conscious in that active sense that we are fighting for the dictatorship of the proletariat in practice. Now, comrades may say, well, I'm actually very class conscious and so on, but if you look at your life, if you have a job, then that is not the way that you relate to your workmates and to your boss. You make sure, if you are any good at the moment as a socialist militant, you make sure you're not late for work too often. That's the reality. You crawl. You do not spend the poor person, or whatever you call them in this country, supervisor, too often. If you write slogans up in the plants, you write them in the toilets. And so on and so on. You are not really living the emancipation of the working class, the act of the working class itself. That's true. If you are, now the truth is, we are most of the time at the moment in the downturn, we live our politics as moaners. No, we moan. If we are members of the IS, we moan in a very articulate way. We moan. Marxist moaners is what we are, right? Moan with the IS. Now, it's even worse if you're unemployed, because then what you do, if you can get out of bed in the morning, in the misery of being unemployed, you crawl around the employer saying, please, let me produce surplus value for you. Please, give me a job. That's what gives me a job means. Let me, please exploit me. Please oppress me. Now the problem is, you see, the problem of class consciousness is not simply one of intellectual conviction. That is the center of the problem. The problem is one about confidence. And it's a problem of power. Class consciousness is about power and the feeling of power. And that's what we don't have, and that's what the Canadian working class, the British working class, the French working class, the Polish working class, so on and so on, around the globe, haven't got at the moment. A sense of power, of its own power. And that's the starting point of revolutionary situations. The working class has a sense of its power to change things. And then we haven't got that at the moment. We wait. We are corrupted by our powerlessness. I mean, it's been said that power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. The truth is that power corrupts, but lack of power, in the case of the working class, corrupts the working class absolutely. It is the most corrupting thing for the working class, its own sense of its own powerlessness. And that we have to start with. And everybody knows this. I mean, everybody's had the discussion in a pub or on a picket line or somewhere with somebody where you start the discussion about socialism and you expound all your ideas and the guy or the woman sits there and smiles and says, I think that what you say is beautiful. But it'll never work. That is the most deadly argument we ever have to deal with. I mean, it's not the racist that is the real problem. It's the worker that says, I think what you say is beautiful. I agree with you completely, but it'll never work. You socialists have lovely ideas, but you're dreaming. You're utopian. You haven't got a clue about reality. And the reality is, you should see those swine that I work with. They will never make a revolution. You should see my husband. That bastard. I mean, that's the reality that people ignore. And that's what I say back to you. You talk about, you want to get abolished the family? Don't give me that rubbish. You have to see the conditions in which I live, but my husband left. Don't talk to me about that. And so on and so on. Because the current experience runs against the possibility of the socialist argument really getting through. And that's why at the moment we only reach a very small minority, because it doesn't connect with the experience. It doesn't connect with day-to-day experience. Everyday experience of capitalism is corrupting at this point in time. And powerlessness, the powerlessness of workers, is terribly corrupting, because it deadens people. It reduces their imagination. It reduces their ability to learn. It makes them intellectually backward. Makes them very, very slow to learn anything. Because how can you learn anything that anything really important, anything new is possible, if you have a sense of the impossibility of changing? So, workers are, it's true, you have to say, workers are, people, the bourgeoisie says workers are backward, you have to say, yes, they are, you make them so. The working class is backward, politically, at this moment. It's true. And it is technically deadened by its sense of powerlessness, by its lack of confidence. And because of that, it's the powerlessness, the lack of confidence amongst workers in the power of their own class to change things, which promotes racism, which promotes sexism, which promotes nationalism, which promotes reformism. All of them depend in the end on the sense of powerlessness of workers in different ways. But all reactionary and halfway ideas depend in the end on that lack of sense of their own power of ordinary working people. Now, fortunately, having said that, we have to say that that is not the whole of working class experience. Because it's also the case that capitalism is founded on class struggle. And it forces workers into struggle, whether they like it or not. Whether they want to or not. Whether they intend to or not. They are forced into struggle. I don't know if there's anybody here from mini schools, and I don't know anything about the mini school strike, but you can be sure that before it started, the workers at mini schools had no intention of going on strike. They had no intention of engaging in the class struggle. They wanted it, they were going to go to work. And then, I don't even know the details of what happened, it doesn't matter. But they were forced into having to have a fight over the question of their conditions, their pay, whatever. And that's the experience of workers have time and again. And in some circumstances, and I don't know what they are in advance of the circumstances, but in some, we only ever know by looking backwards into history what the circumstances were for particular workers in particular circumstances. What the circumstances were. Sometimes that experience of being forced into struggle explodes. It explodes in a way that nobody expected at all. And you see it, of course you don't only see it in the beginnings of revolutions or revolutionary situations, you also see it in strikes, you also see it in tenant movements, you also see this sudden explosion of confidence, a sudden explosion of readiness to try new methods, try new things, a feeling of muscle. And that suddenly grows, and you never know that it's going to happen the day before it happens. Those who it happens never know that it's going to happen. It is always unexpected. And every revolutionary situation always begins unexpectedly. Now, the initiating event, what initiated the event, you look back in history, it can be all sorts of things. In 1980 in Gdansk, it was a 50-year-old woman crane driver being sacked from the shipyard. And that was the initiating event. Now, I'm afraid, comrades, it is no good going down to some shipyard somewhere and hoping that a 50-year-old woman train driver will be sacked. It will never happen like that again. In 1968 in France, the students in France were a very privileged section of society, particularly in France, given the structure of French higher education. Students in France fought the police on the night of the barricades in France in 1968, 10th of May. And they fought all night against the police, and on the Monday, a general strike started, which turned into the biggest general strike in world history. And nobody knew in advance that students fighting on the barricades would initiate that popular explosion in France. You couldn't predict it. In 1871 in Paris, it was when the cannon that the workers had subscribed to there was an attempt made to take back the cannon that the workers had subscribed to at the beginning of the Paris Commune. That was the 1917, it was a food drive, a bread drive. It doesn't matter what the issue is. It can be 1,001 things. It will certainly be something that nobody ever expected to be that event. You know, you don't know what it is, so nobody's trying to guess. You just have to say, oh, it's another surprising event. So don't plan it, don't predict it. We are not in the business of prophecy. There is a falling rate of profits theory in Marxism, and we stick with that. Anyway, once you have that situation, there is no way in which you can describe how it happened. Because it is always a surprise, and it happens over and over again in different countries, in different circumstances. When it happens, you have a class in movement, a working class that is suddenly in movement, then there are all sorts of things that happen. There is amongst workers, when that happens, an explosion of collective pleasure. I don't know how else to describe it. Of joy, a sense of joy, which workers suddenly have about their situation. You have to look at the film of Gdansk in 1980, of the workers occupying the shipyards and the factories and the flowers and the priests and everything. Whatever the Spartacists may say, the priest being there was part of the sense of power and joy and pleasure. A fantastic new sense of the possibilities of freedom, of changing the world, that something new is happening and that there is hope in the world. All of those things are part of that sudden release of previous breaks that were on people. And there's a sense of mastery, and it's a sense of power that comes to people. And you have to say that that is unexpected. It's certainly unexpected by the bosses. It's certainly unexpected by people like trade union bureaucrats and so on. And above all, it is unexpected on the part of those to whom it happens, who make it happen. Workers do not begin a revolution, initiate a revolutionary situation by planning to do so. They find themselves in that situation, and they then have to think, good God, what happened? Where are we? This is marvelous, but how did it happen? We didn't expect it. Lenin has this lovely phrase that talks about an explosion of what he calls festive energy in the working class, in a revolutionary situation. And what it involves is a sudden increase in confidence amongst workers, in their own organisation, in their own capacity, in their own ability to change things, to control things, which is quite unexpected and quite new, and is the condition for a revolution. There is that sudden upsurge in popular confidence. In those circumstances, workers feel able to start formulating new demands. They didn't dream of formulating, or only dreamt of formulating, perhaps I should say, a day before, or a week before. New demands start to emerge, and new forms of organisation start to be created amongst workers. And because everything is dialectical in this world, there is another side to this, and that is that amongst the ruling class, there is a sudden loss of confidence. A terrible loss of confidence amongst the ruling class, which is the other condition for a revolutionary situation, that the ruling class can no longer continue to rule in the old way. They suddenly fall apart. They don't know what to do. They start sacking their own members. In Poland, it was wonderful. All the workers at the start of the Polish movement that were in hospital suddenly started discharging themselves from hospital. And a few weeks later, after the wards in the hospital was empty, workers suddenly got better. Against medical advice, they were leaving hospital. And then a few weeks later, the hospital started filling up again with under-managers. And bureaucrats. And the doctor who wrote an account of this in a German paper called Politica in Poland said she then faced an ethical dilemma. Should she make the bosses well again? See, everything collapses. All the assumptions you had before, that, workers will come to work, they will obey. They will not be too late for work too often. They will do what they're told. All those things start to collapse. The obedience, the order in society is suddenly collapsing. People don't obey orders anymore. People start answering back. People start no longer writing graffiti on the toilet. They start writing it on the factory wall. And they start occupying the factories. Goodness knows what they do. They become totally unpredictable and very frightening to the boss class. And the ruling class becomes disoriented, it becomes terrified, it becomes divided, and it becomes laughable. Workers start laughing at the employers much more. I mean, workers circulate jokes, particularly in Eastern Europe. They circulate jokes now about the employing class, about their rulers. But suddenly the jokes are so much funnier. Suddenly they have you can see what lunacy is, and how silly the people that rule are, and how weak they are, and how unconfident they are, and how now they stammer when you talk to them. And they go to hospital, and so on and so on. So there's a fantastic redrawing of the balance of power and the balance of confidence between classes. There's a tremendous process of mass psychological transformation going on, which affects the classes differently. Those who rule confidently and brashly lose confidence. Those who were submissive are suddenly confident. And everything becomes possible. All sorts of possibilities suddenly open up. That's why there's new learning going on. And so on and so on. Now, if that doesn't happen, you have to say no revolution is possible. That is the absolute precondition for there being a social revolution. And it's only in that way that workers can become capable of ruling society. Because the working class in Canada is incapable of ruling society today. On the 1st of July, it's always related today, it cannot rule society. The very basic reason is it doesn't believe it can rule society. You have to believe you can rule society to rule. The most disgusting thing about the ruling classes is their confidence. Look at Mrs. Thatcher. I mean, I don't know the equivalent in Canada of Mrs. Thatcher.
Yeah.
What is most horrible about Mrs. Thatcher is her confidence. She is horrible because she looks so smug. The great day is when the smile disappears from her face. That transformation of the basis of confidence of power, the feeling which happens in the working class of collective growth, but also among each individual worker, fantastic feeling of personal development that goes on in that kind of situation, of personal progress and development and possibilities and dreams opening up. Then it calls the situation of a revolutionary situation a festival of the oppressed. And I think that's a beautiful account of that process of psychological transformation which goes on amongst millions, a festival of the oppressed. There was a French revolutionary in the French Revolution of the 18th century. I can't remember his name. He said, "The great appear great because we are on our knees. Let us arise." And that's what happened in the beginning of a revolutionary situation. That suddenly the great no longer appear great. We are no longer on our knees. We arise. And as a result, the workers become more intelligent. They don't look backward. They start to become more and more intelligent, more and more capable of rule, more and more capable of learning and developing and organizing and so on. They grow immensely and very, very fast in their own capacity. And the problem for revolutions in that situation is to keep up with the transformations that are going on in the working class. Because suddenly, we can say, well, we're very much in advance of Canadian working class or whatever. You can find yourself in such a situation 5 miles behind. Having to race to keep up. Suddenly the revolutionary organisation becomes very backward. Will you please, comrades, stop having educational meetings once a month and really think of getting out of this routine of only selling in the Dufferin Mall once a month, and so on and so on. You really have to think a little bigger. You're behind the times. And every revolutionary party states the crisis of conservatism. That was the centre of Lenin's attack in the period of the 1905 revolution. That's when the Bolshevik party is, because the working class is miles ahead, suddenly. And that situation is one which expands workers' capacity to rule. At such times, said Lenin, writing in his pamphlet to attack social democracy, at such times the people are capable of performing miracles. The language may sound religious, but it's right, because there's no other way of expressing this sudden increase in power. And there's an expansion of culture in every possible sense. When just after the Russian Revolution, Lunacharsky, there was huge demonstrations, there was a huge gathering of workers and women with babies in their arms and so on. 30,000 workers gathered to hear somebody speak. A man called Lunacharsky, who just become a commissar for culture in the new Bolshevik government. What was he going to speak on? Greek drama. What the hell did Russian workers want to know about Greek drama for? Hey, there's a meeting, let's go. Somebody's talking about something really interesting. We don't know anything about, let's go. It could be good. Let's go and hear about Greek drama. The Polish workers, it's not the case now, but in the period when solidarity was rising, Polish workers worked a long day, and then they came home, and suddenly they wanted to read. And Polish workers all over Poland were reading an hour, 2 hours a night. Anything they could get hold of that was at all worth discussing, they read and they read. In the period of the Russian Revolution, somebody reported workers snatched the papers from the hands of the Bolshevik sellers. I know it doesn't happen at the moment, comrades, but imagine, you're on the Dufferin Mall or wherever it is, and suddenly, give me that, how much? $1, $2, doesn't matter, give. Let's stop trading in the middle of the Russian countryside. Do you have any reading matter? We have somebody in our village that can read. Give us something to read. Just doesn't matter conservative, doesn't matter, give us reading matter. Suddenly this is something we need to know, because suddenly we feel powerful. We need now to control the world. We must have knowledge, because suddenly knowledge matters. The process of education, self-education, is transformed in such a situation. The other thing that happens is that the crowds that go to see spectator things start diminishing. In Portugal, the turnout for the football matches went down and down and down as long as the workers' movement was rising. When the workers' movement went down again, the football terraces filled up again. I'm afraid the same will happen to ice hockey and baseball. What happens in this situation, the whole society is thrown into the melting pot, and the question becomes who will rule and how will they rule? And that becomes the central question. And it's a completely open question to which nobody knows the answer in advance of the situation. And what happens in that situation, of course, is that what is brought into play, I'm afraid it is not a nice simple situation where on the one hand there are revolutionaries saying forward, and on the other hand there is the state saying back, and that's all there is to it. What happens in such a situation is all sorts of forces are brought into play with 1,001 different suggestions for resolving the crisis. Because you can't stay in a situation of crisis forever, it has to be resolved. In one way or another it must be resolved. And every voice but the revolutionary voice will suggest the demobilization of the working class. The reformists will suggest it in the best interest of the workers. We must negotiate, we must, they will say you must trust the Pope, you must trust Khomeini, you must trust Bernser, trust your union leaders, trust your left MPs, trust the NDP. Some fools will even say trust IS, instead of saying trust yourself. But trust somebody else, demobilize yourself. And of course the right will be saying, no question of trust, get back or we'll smash you down. And everybody will be saying demobilize the working class. Demobilize in one way or another. Reduce the sense of confidence. The insurgency of the working class has got to be reduced. And the new organisations that workers create in the situation of in a revolutionary situation. In the rise of a revolutionary movement, workers always create, it's a real rise of a revolutionary movement, workers always create new forms of organisation. Those new forms of organisation are always open to co-optation, if you like, to be co-opted by the reformists, co-opted into the structures of official society. There will be all sorts of centrists from the left of the NDP, from the Communist Party, the most left wing of the Communist Party. There will even be people inside the IS. No doubt, everybody wobbles. There will be people saying, God, take this at the time, we mustn't go too far. We will have to have workers' councils and parliament and new parliamentary elections. Let's fudge the issue. Fudge the issue. There is no, and we have to expect it. There's no way in which the working class can leap immediately from a situation of powerlessness and being in a downturn into the revolution, into mastering society. You can't go one day from the beginning of the upsurge immediately into the revolution. There is always there's a process of struggle that can last for months. It can't last forever, but it lasts for quite an extended period between the initiation of the revolution and the actual revolution. I'm assuming this is just a revolution, just for the sake of the argument. There is a period of very important struggle within the working class organisation over what now we do. Is it to be the reformist road, which means in the end a terrible defeat for workers, or is it in fact to be the march to the revolution? A period of struggle of tendencies within the side of the working class, within all the other four sections of society, about what is to be done to resolve the crisis. Now, the key measure of the socialist potential of a revolution is the degree to which workers do create new organisations. They have different names in different places. It was called the Commune of Paris in 1871. In the 20th century, they generally had titles like Soviets or Workers' Councils. Bodies created directly out of the work-based experience, initially out of the work-based experience of workers, coming together in geographical organisations that then look beyond the factory and beyond the factory's interests to start talking about the interests of the whole city, the whole country. A political organisation which represents, as soon as it appears, the embryo of workers' power. A new kind of organisation which is quite different from Parliament, which is different because if you look at all the history of the Soviet, of the workers' councils in different countries, they're very much more open, very much more democratic organisations. They're based on the principles of the Paris Commune, of the recall of delegates, and so on, the callability of delegates, control in the hands of the rank and file, and so on and so on. And they're very, very fluid organisations. You look at the composition of the Soviets in the period from February to October 1917. In the period of 6 months, time after time, the composition changes, and it continued to change after the revolution. As long as the Soviets had any life in them, the composition of the Soviets kept changing. The Bolsheviks' position grew and grew and grew up to, October 19. Could somebody possibly get me something wet? Thanks. Excuse me, Mum. Thanks, sorry. fantastic fluidity of their composition and their openness to develop, which is not characteristic of Parliament. Parliament, I don't know what the situation is in this country. It has elections every few years anyway. It is completely unrelated to the mood of workers from day to day. Whereas in the case of the Soviet or the Workers' Council, there was a fantastic responsiveness. There's a case in the history of the Russian Soviets. After the revolution, there was a demonstration and several workers got killed. And the Bolshevik presence in the Soviets went down. Within 12 hours, a number of Bolshevik delegates had been withdrawn by those who sent them. And it took several weeks before the Bolsheviks recovered their position inside the Central Soviet. Very, very quick response. Quite unlike Parliament. I mean, once you've elected your misrepresentative to Parliament, then you're stuck with the bastard for 4 years or whatever it is. You've got no ability to pull him or her back, most of you. And it's within this form, the Soviet, the Workers' Council, that the key political conflict within the working class occurred. That's what the revolutions have in fact moved to win. Now, the importance of the council is quite simple, as I say, that they represent the embryo of the workers' state. And it's here that the first moves to rule are made. In every significant revolutionary movement, even well before the revolution, you see the beginnings of the exercise of political power by workers. The organisation, not merely of strike committees, but the organisation of food supplies. The control of prices in the shops in a particular locality. The organisation that goes beyond the factories to the organisation of housewives that polices the price controls in the shops, whatever it may be. The licensing of lorries to not simply a stop of all lorries, but beginning to allow lorries to move again, but now with a workers' council pass that permits them to pass through the picket lines to carry messages. The taking over of this and that function, which is normally carried out by the ruling class, the organisation of the feeding of the population, the organisation of policing in the city, the creation of militia of workers, initially perhaps in the factories, to defend the factories, but stretching out beyond the factories, the beginnings of workers' power, of the workers' state power. Now, in such a situation, there is no clear line between economic and political questions. It's not that in capitalism there are economic questions, therefore trade unions, and political questions, therefore the NDP, or for the Liberal Party, or for whatever party. Everything becomes part of the same question, and you get very rapid movement in terms of workers' interest from one kind of question to another, all within the same kind of organising framework. And revolutions that don't recognise that fail. And revolutionary leadership that don't recognise that fail. I mean, you look at Solidarity in 1981, a few months before the coup, there was a big upsurge of strikes of workers who hadn't struck on their own before. They'd always followed. They were the most downtrodden workers very often in the most recently organised factories, and they couldn't stand the pressure any longer of rising prices and food shortages, and they struck for completely economic demand. And Solidarity tragically ignored those strikes. Went down trying to push them down. Instead of leading them, trying to show them that they must go beyond those demands, the politics, the question of power. Economic demand, whole new strata of workers into the struggle. Because a crisis, when we say a crisis, a revolutionary situation is a crisis. The economic crisis, the crisis of standard of living, it's a crisis not simply about power, it's a crisis about every aspect of life. And new sections of workers are drawn in, and other sections of society as well, small shopkeepers, peasants, small farmers in the gas bay, etc., will all be drawn, beekeepers, all sorts of people will be drawn into the struggle in this kind of way. And no insult to the comrade. And there's a fantastic interaction between general questions and particular questions, economic questions and questions about dreaming about the transformation of the world. And those who miss the sense of the way the movement develops, who aren't attuned, whose noses aren't working properly, can terribly mislead the movement in that situation. The question, therefore, of the party and its relationship to the working class, its ability to lead, its ability to learn from workers about how things are changing, how the mood is changing, and so on, becomes absolutely fundamental to the question of development. So the question of the revolutionary party becomes more and more critical. The question of whether there is one and how it is developing and whether its members are able to lead and so on becomes more and more and more critical as the process of the revolutionary situation develops. And there's no question that we have to be attentive. The revolutionists have to be attentive not simply to the advanced sections of the working class, but to the whole working class and moves outside the working class in other sections of society that can possibly be one to support the working class. Petty bourgeoisie and so on, university professors, small shopkeepers, and all those kinds of riffraff. Those people who can be one, and their support or their opposition can be crucial to the fate of the revolution, because they legitimate the revolution amongst workers as well, to the extent that another section of the petty bourgeoisie comes to support the workers' movement feels stronger, and so on. And therefore, we have to be attentive to the question of the majority of the working class, and that actually means many people outside the working class as well, so the way that the mood is changing amongst them all. Because if you go too soon, if you only follow the lead of the most advanced section, you can get into you can make a terrible mistake. It is called the defeat of the Spartans uprising of January 1919. They rose too early. They were impatient. They weren't properly embedded in the whole of the working class. They hadn't built up. And the tragedy of Rosa Luxemburg and Karl Liebknecht was that they weren't able to stop a premature uprising. And as a result, the German Revolution suffered a terrible defeat. And Marx suffered a terrible defeat in the loss of Rosa Luxemburg in particular. And the same, you compare that with the Bolsheviks, who, when thousands and tens of thousands of workers were calling for an immediate revolution in July 1917, the Bolsheviks went on the streets to urge the workers not to fight yet, and became extremely unpopular amongst the most advanced sections of the workers at that time, because their estimate was quite simply the peasantry isn't moving fast enough yet, the workers in the more backward towns are not moving yet, it will be a premature uprising, it will be like Paris in 1871, the drowning of the Paris Commune in blood because it was isolated, because Paris was isolated. We had to wait for the rest of Russia to catch up, therefore we damped it down from it. It was a terrible moment for the Bolsheviks. Then he had to go into hiding, Trotsky arrested, in prison, in danger of his life. Terrible retreat of the Bolshevik party in July, August, and then they were saved. Because the ruling class tried to advance too fast, and the Kornilov attempt, and suddenly the Bolsheviks were able to become the leaders of the opposition to Kornilov, which marched forward the revolution. But they had that terrible test of time for them, when really everything could have been lost, and they very nearly split their own party asunder, etc., etc. You can expect to have to face those kinds of crises in the middle of a real revolutionary situation. Terrible splits inside your own organisation. The most advanced workers condemning the organisation for its backwardness, for being conservative, for being reformist. God knows. And we will be tested, comrades. Anyway, the climax of the movement, we have to say, quite simply, to put the matter very brutally, the climax of the movement of revolution is civil war. That's to put it very brutally, but we have to be quite clear that it is a necessary stage in every revolution. There is an unavoidable violent conflict between the revolutionary movement and what is left of the old state. Because it is not the question, of course, the very revolution itself reaches into the state. Any modern state will be subverted immensely by the revolution. There are so many civil servants. They will join the revolutionary movement. Many of them, most of them, especially the ones at the lower level. They will be involved in the movement. The state forces become unreliable. You have to see what happened even in Poland, which was not a revolution by any means. Sections of the army demanding to join sections of the police demanding to form their own independent union in alliance with the Solidarity banner on them. Sections of the army demanding to be demobilized so that they could rejoin their brothers and sisters in the factories. The state being subverted by the pressure of the working class outside. That's crucial, but there's a section that is left. It might be called, in Poland, it's called the Zoma. The most dastardly section of the security services. They will never break to the revolution. They will have to be broken by the revolution. And there's no way that can be done other than by armed confrontation. They have to be disarmed. And the question, the armed power of the state, what remains of it, has to be broken at a certain decisive moment. Things have to be taken over decisively at a certain moment. Radio, television, etc. The question is no longer any question of them being on strike in support of the workers' movement. They have to be opened up again under workers' power, and they have to be seized. And though all those things, that's the process which we can call civil war. It may be very quick, it may be very difficult. The quicker it is, the better. And you have to compare, for example, Petrograd and Moscow in November 1917. In Petrograd, the working class was completely united. 16 people died in the uprising, which is less than dying on the streets of Canada in the Holy Weekend. And power was seized in Petrograd with very, very little death. And then you come to Moscow, where things were, we had less experienced Bolshevik party organizers, the less rootedness of the Bolshevik party in the factories. Fantastic, terrible battle that lasted for a week or more to take Moscow. And hundreds of workers were killed. You have to read John Reed's book, 10 Days to Shook the World. It's a beautiful book. There's a very, very moving account of the revolution of the funeral of the revolutionary dead. Huge pit dug out of the ground and the workers' coffins being carried hours and hours of carrying the workers' coffins into the grave, collective grave of those who died in the Texas mosque. The stronger we are, the less bloodshed. We have to be quite clear about this. Strength is everything. And the more decisive, stronger, the less. The perfect revolution is one in which nobody is killed. Quite clear. And it is simply, the perfect revolution is one in which the working class is so strong that the ruling class just sits there and doesn't fight back at all. And it is not impossible, because they will be so shocked in an advanced capitalist country. Russia was one thing, but in an advanced capitalist country they will be so shocked, so demoralized that we don't necessarily have to talk in terms of how much blood will flow in the gutters. That is not the question. It can be very non-violent. The difficulty is to get there. We've been struggling a long time to get there. The difficulty is to get there. It's not necessarily a question of enormous violence. We have to be quite clear, though, that for the ruling class, it is a desperate question. Because from their point of view, a revolution is not the initiation of a new stage in human civilization. It is the end of civilization, as far as they're concerned. The end of civilization as we have known it. For the last, 8,000 years or something, the history of human development has been within the framework of class society. All the great artistic achievements of mankind have been achieved within the framework of class society. Everything that is beautiful, everything that is wonderful, everything that is clever, everything that is development has occurred within the framework of class society. Now these people want to smash it all. They want to smash class society. Of course they will fight. They will regard it as a tremendous moral question. They must fight to defend civilization against the barbarian hordes. That's how they will see it. They must do. This is the whole of their experience, the whole of their lives, to think we must rule, because if we don't, there will be nothing but anarchy and chaos, because it is impossible that the dirty, unwashed proletariat should, or the people in t-shirts, should be able to rule. It is impossible. They cannot rule. They are incapable. We know that they are mean-minded and narrow and greedy, and that's what they want. They just want to have power for themselves. And therefore, we will have to use any means necessary to stop them. And the ruling class will be absolutely ruthless if given the chance. You have to look at the terrible repression that always follows every serious failed revolutionary movement. You look at Chile, you look at Poland, you look at Iran. The repression that follows in one way or another after the failure of a workers' movement actually to take power. And the more serious the workers' movement, the nearer it comes to taking power, the more violent the ruling class will be. Always the violence of the counter-revolution is infinitely worse than the violence of the revolution. Always. The communards killed a few people, an archbishop and a few other worthies. Those who destroyed the commune killed 10, 20, 30,000, who knows? There's an argument about how many, but thousands were slaughtered. When the Finnish working class after the First World War did not join the Russian Revolution, but nearly came to the revolution and then retreated, they suffered with tens of thousands of dead and arrested and so on. The Finnish ruling class knew that it was dealing with them, it had to crush a majority. And therefore they had to use much more violence than the working class was using. They will be terrible. And the question of the revolution becomes, at a certain point, the necessity of civil war becomes the saving of the revolution movement. Either we march forward or we retreat. And if we retreat to our graves. That becomes the question. Now, one other thing before, and then I'll come to the last bit and see what time we've got, because everybody's probably very tired. If the revolution is successful in one country, we have to be quite clear that it can't last for very long, if it stays isolated. And there are all sorts of points of view from which one can discuss this question of the necessity of extending the revolution, the necessity of international socialism, the impossibility of socialism in one country. Just one way of looking at it, and that is to look at it in military terms. Because the effect of the isolation of revolution in one country on the working class's ability to rule is disastrous. You see, one of the things which is initiated by a workers' revolution is a democratic militia, a democratic ordering of the forces of law and order in society. There is one disadvantage with having a democratic army or police and so on, and that is that it is not as efficient. It's rather pleasing, actually, in some ways, for those of you who have dealings with the police and the army, to know that it is not as efficient at fighting certain kinds of engagement as is a bourgeois army, which has hierarchy and discipline, and orders and commands, and notions like mutiny in it. And you have to look at what happened to the Paris Commune. The communards had as fighting forces 2 or 3 times the number of people that the invaders had. But the communards had only their own voluntary self-discipline. the invaders had military discipline. For the communards to have won, they would have had to reorganize their forces in a bureaucratic army structure, and that would have been the death of the communists. They died another way, I mean a much more bloody way. But you look at what happened in Russia, the necessity of fighting the civil war for 2 years against invading bourgeois armies ruined the Russian Revolution. It was part of the process of the degeneration of the Russian Revolution. It was beginning from the beginning of the Civil War. You cannot fight. Trotsky created the Red Army, but he created it on the grave of workers' democracy in the army. It was not possible to win against the White Army with the Democratic Army. Therefore, the question of the spreading of the revolution is absolutely crucial. We can win militarily, possibly. The Russian Revolution won militarily against the White, but it lost politically. Politically, it was lost. By the end of the Civil War, the Soviets were dead as real live instruments of the working class. That's the truth. I mean, the degeneration of the Russian Revolution is not something that started in 1929, or the early 20s. Stalin, I mean, it begins almost from the day after the revolution. Absolutely crucially determined by the speed with which it spreads. Of course, I mean, there's a lot that could be said about how the possibilities of the revolution spreading are very much greater now because the world is much more integrated, because the capitalism is a much more unified system. There's television that spreads the news about things very much faster and so on. Nonetheless, the question is an urgent one. I think I should cut most of what I was going to do, so I'll just talk about one thing. The problems of consolidation of the revolution. We'll assume the success of the revolution. We'll assume that we've begun to solve the problem of the internationalization of the revolution. We'll assume, let's assume a little joy in the world. And we have to be the problems of the consolidation and the development of the revolution, the beginning of the development of socialism. That's what we're now talking about. Somebody has stood up and said, comrades, we will now begin to construct the socialist order. And everybody will have cheered and agreed. Right, we are there. Okay, what are the problems now? And there are a number. I mean, politics doesn't stop. We suddenly don't leap into utopia. There are quite a few problems, and I can't talk about them all. The ones I'm not going to talk about, the question of the peasantry and our relation, and the question of plans and markets, and all those sort of, questions about economic policy and so on. All of those things I have to leave out. I'll just talk about one thing, which is the question of production. Because if the revolution is the product of crisis in capitalism, it is also the case that the revolution makes the crisis worse. And the inheritance of any revolution, in material terms, is factories that aren't working properly, disorganized supplies, reduced standard of living for workers, a crisis which is made worse by the very fact of the revolution. It isn't possible to keep production going in the middle of a workers' uprising. I mean, I tell you that in advance. So every revolution leads to a reduction in the level of the productive forces. A reduction in the level of the productive forces. We start in very unfavourable circumstances. Do not imagine that. We start with the utopian production plan. We start with a crisis in the economy. And the real problem then is posed. Either production is restarted under the control of the working class, or it has got to be restarted by somebody else. And it is not yet the case in history that the working class has managed to solve that problem. Practically, to be quite clear, the Russian working class did not manage to get production started under its own steam. It did not have the experience, it did not have the it wasn't big enough. It wasn't big enough, and it was faced with too many material problems. And there was an attempt, there was also an attempt, the truth is that power slipped out of the hands of the Workers' Council in the conduct of production into the hands increasingly of a little tiny, initially very, very worthy nascent bureaucracy. And the question is, does the bureaucracy force the working class to restart production, or does the working class restart production under its own discipline? And that becomes a crucial question determining the fate of the revolution and the forward march. And you see, the question of solving the economic crisis, it is necessary to solve an economic crisis. Somebody has to solve it. Because food supplies have to be started again, production supplies have to be started again, all supplies have to be started again, the economy has to be recoordinated. The question is, who is to do it? And it isn't simply an economic problem, it's fundamentally a political problem. And it's a central problem in the sense of the development of the socialist revolution. The development of the working class's capacity to rule society, which means also to rule the economy. The question of the work isn't simply a question of controlling this or that factory, it's a question of actually coordinating activity between factories and actually getting production going again. And we shouldn't be utopian about how fast that will happen. There will be fantastic mistakes, fantastic learning processes that are involved in that, and so on. And we have to be clear too that the measure of economic development becomes an entirely new one. It isn't any longer that we measure economic development simply in terms of how much more we are producing in terms of material goods, though that's important, because it's important for workers' own morale, for the more backward sections feeling that the revolution means something to them, and so on and so on. But it isn't simply a question of the production of goods. The question of the self-production of workers that actually are able to rule society becomes the crucial question. The growth in the confidence of workers, the sense of their own confidence, their own ability to rule society, their own sense of their own collective power, and therefore their belief in their own democratic organizations, and so on and so on. That's the crucial question. See, when Marx wrote Capital, one of the things that he writes about all the way through Capital is how under capitalism, as workers produce things, they also produce their own oppression. They produce things which contain surplus value, which become the property of the ruling class, become the means through which they are ruled. And every worker that produces Ford cars produces Henry Ford. And similarly, you have to say that under socialism, workers that begin to restart production under their own control begin to reproduce themselves as the ruling class. And the two things are not they're simultaneous process. The extent that workers begin to restart production themselves, they announce that they are the ruling class. And we need new measures of growth. Therefore, it isn't simply a question of the growth of things, it's a question of the growth of people. The self-growth, the self-development of people, which becomes the crucial measure of the development of socialism. Their own capacity, their own confidence, their own intellectual ability, their own sense of mastery, which grows. And the Russian workers didn't achieve that. Therefore, we have to say I think the measure we will have to adopt is it the case that we have restored production to the level, the best level that capitalism achieved under workers' power? Because if we can say, after 2, 3, 4 years, that we've got production back to the best level that capitalism ever achieved under workers' power, with workers controlling the conditions, which means much improved safety, which means much improved working hours, which means better pay, all those things. If we've got back there, we have actually thrown the most marvellous moral gauntlet down to history. Basically, because we've achieved something that never happened before in history. We have really begun to initiate the process of the development towards socialism. Now, because as the well springs of popular self-government flow, then, and as popular initiative grows and popular mastery of society grows, okay, this is under those conditions, then production can rise, and we can move towards the situation in which we really can talk about what capitalism can't offer. Capitalism offers us constantly something it can't deliver, which is a society of abundance. It is clear that capitalism now, the means exist for a world of abundance, but capitalism can't achieve it. The socialist revolution is a precondition for the society of abundance, in which it is then possible, as Marx put it, for society to describe on its balance, from each according to his ability, to each according to his needs. We can begin then to talk in terms of crossing the horizon from the transitional process of the development of the socialist economy to a really communist society. None of us will live to see that. None of us will live to see it. Perhaps our children, our grandchildren will live to see that. But the full flowering of a different world in which genuinely the world belongs to the human race. Now, that's one possible future for mankind. I want to end really by saying this. That's one possible future for mankind. The other possible future for the human race is the destruction of the world. And that's really our choices now facing the world in the later part of the 20th century. The choice either between socialism or barbarism. It's quite clear that Reagan and Andropov and all the rest of them offer us that choice. Either we get rid of them and their system, or they will get rid of us. By accident or by design. That's the choice now for the world, either socialism or barbarism. And therefore the question of the social revolution is not, as I say, just a question of dreaming, it's a question of immense urgency for humanity. Otherwise the cockroaches inherit the earth. Maybe they will grow, who knows, but I don't really want to sit there. I think there are better possible futures. Mankind took thousands or millions of years to rise. It would be such a waste for us to wipe the earth out, wipe ourselves out now. The job of socialists in the latter years of the 20th century is to fight for the future of the human race. We are not simply fighting for the future of the working class in Canada or for better wages. We are fighting for the future of the human race. That's what we're fighting for. And we're fighting for the politics of working class power against the reformists, against the Stalinists, against the bureaucrats, against every kind of rubbish that exists, every kind of rubbishy ideas that exist within the workers' movement. That's what we have to fight for. And this requires now, not in a few years' time, but now that we start to build socialist organizations. Because I come back to where I started. In Poland, there were 4. They were marvelous in their courage, in their dedication, in their activity, and they were rotten in their politics. We have 80. That's twice as good. And the politics are better. That's very, very good. That really is, you see, the thing is that the 40 could prepare the way for the movement of 10 million. The 80 can do better, comrades. They can prepare the way for 10 million and 40. And that's not a utopia. But the fact is, the possibility, what we have to do now, you see, CORE failed in the end. The tragedy is that CORE prepared the way for the marvellous movement of solidarity and also for its defeat. And the question of what we do now, just as the question of what CORE did in the period of the downturn, in the period of the hard struggle, just to put up a few leaflets, to paint a few walls, to issue a few workers' bulletins and so on, to produce a newspaper. What they did was crucial. And what we do is fantastically crucial in this movement. Every member that we make now makes a fantastic difference for the future. If CORE had got to, it would have been able just a little bit more better to coordinate. So the question of numbers now is very, very important. The question of the politics is crucial. And what we do now really is, it sounds too dramatic to say, but it's actually true that what we do now in 1983 is crucial for the future of mankind. So, if you agree, you should join the International Socialist Movement. I'll stop.